Welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. It's January 17th, 2023, and we're going to do an update on crude oil today. We'll also look at various energy stocks as well. Let's try to understand where is the direction of crude oil going and where are energy stocks going. They don't always move in the same direction. And we know natural gas has gotten smashed lately. If you haven't seen those videos, definitely take a look. I have in the pinned comment, you'll see a playlist for natural gas updates. We've been talking about it since early December when we were trading closer to $6. That $3.60 area looked like a magnet. And so in some ways, it's like the natural gas decline came many months after kind of the oil sort of decline. And so let's talk about oil here. So we are just back at our, we're looking at the daily cycle here. This is WTI, and again, Brent, same exact pattern, different specific levels, obviously. But this thing is, it's pretty relentless in a way, right? So we made this high on day 15, and we had this like really big decline. So what are we at? Day 25 here, right? Just getting so in real time, and we talked about this, on this very channel, like, oh, looks like we're going to roll over again, right? Like just this candle alone, right, is a big bearish outside candle, right? Let's just zoom in here, right? It makes a higher high above here and then makes a lower low. And you're like, okay, as I said in that video, I expect follow through. These things tend to have follow through in the direction that, whether it's bullish or bearish. And lo and behold, we did have that follow through, big red candle, closed red. And then the following day, we even made another lower low. So the bottom tick on that one was $72.50. But then we went green, right? And that pattern, when we make a lower low, then it's just like this pattern, but in reverse, right? This made a higher high and then went red and then made a lower low. This made a lower low and then went green. Now, what it didn't do is make a higher high. It didn't complete the pattern. In fact, over the next 2 days, it really kind of just consolidated, right? Like notice, we couldn't get outside of the range of that candle for one. So after this low, 1, 2, 3. It was on the fourth day that it finally broke out, but it broke out kind of clean. And then, as they say in the technical analysis world, it back tested. That's what this wick is. On a lower time frame, price pulled back to here, went below the low, went back into this range, and then it bounced back up. So here we find ourselves on day 25. Have we made a new higher high? So 81.19, 81.44. So not a new high just yet. But at this point, we're, pennies away. And you can see that blue line is the 10-period moving average. So it's your 10-day moving average. We're well above that now. So at worst case scenario, this thing doesn't want to move below 70, it seems, right? Again, that bottom tick was 72. It didn't even touch 70. So where does that put us for this weekly cycle, right? This thing has been a little confounding. And so we talked about the idea that this was a weekly cycle low on week 24. And then this was a new weekly cycle, topped out on week 6, big, ugly double top. And then did it bottom on week 10, right? Or is it still rolling over here? And so we're just going to add that. And that's the thing. You can't pretend that you know exactly what's going to happen, right? Like we need to be open to different possibilities as we see more price action. Because interestingly enough, we're actually still like you see this line here, we're still below these highs, like these 3 weeks of wick. Like notice price just couldn't get above that like 80, call it the 83 area, right? And so that is going to be important, right? Like we may have although this looks quite bullish, we're making a higher high on the weekly chart, which is awesome. Like we may have some serious trouble when we get back to 83, although at the same time, after these repeated attempts and this kind of consolidating below it, maybe it blasts through there this time, right? So one scenario is that this is a weekly, this would be your weekly cycle low, right? And then this would be week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, technically, potentially week 6. So there are a few different scenarios here. Right now, this is leaning bullish, so I'm inclined to think this might be more the scenario, if anything. And part of that is because risk assets as a whole are rallying, and so that's going to have a corollary on this. And now this monthly chart. Look at this candle, how this thing closed out. A doji. I think maybe some people might call that a dragonfly. But the high of this candle from December is, and let me take this off log. The high from this candle in December is 83.32. That's not a coincidence. We just talked about how that 83 area was a problem. And so if we were able to get above that 83 zone, we would have a monthly swing low. It would make December a monthly swing low, and potentially the long-term bottom for this. Like, think about it. We had this huge rally. That could be the end of the decline, and ready to like in its simplest terms. We obviously had some higher lows here, but just simply putting, this was a rally of 23 months, right? From this swing low to that swing high right here. I mean, it's really here. And then we declined into a month 32 low, potentially. Again, we've got to cross above the high of this month, which is just above 83. Again, not a coincidence. So going to be really interesting. The levels are very clear. Let's look at some of the actual oil names. So Valero, VLO, making a new high on the monthly chart, looking very bullish, and confirming that low on the week of December 5th was a weekly cycle low, week 21. So that would put us on week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, week 6. Now, we still haven't made a higher high above the last weekly cycle's high. So that's important. This could be exactly where we stall out, right? Like, as bullish as this looks, and I'll just be clear, as bullish as this looks, it's all just an inside. These are all just inside candles of these two candles, if you think about them as compound candles. Now, notice we just poked our head above the high of this one, and then we came coming back in, and that is this candle here, this daily candle that's pulling back pretty hard. Where does that put us in the daily cycle? Let's see. So we'll look at the daily cycle for each, and then quickly the weekly cycle. So that puts us at day 24. Wouldn't be shocking if we were getting our daily cycle decline here, right? So we'd have to see, like, it would have to be relatively mild in order for the weekly cycle advance to continue in order for the weekly cycle to continue to advance. So we'll be watching for that. Let's look at XLE. That's obviously going to be okay. So that's on day 24. So same count as VLO. And same kind of candle too, big pullback. Although notice in real time, this looked really ominous, right? Like, I remember I tweeted about this. Maybe it was in a video too. Like, look at that. Once we broke below the low of this candle, that looked really bad. And then we had this little feeble rally for 2 days, and then we made a lower low. So just to be crystal clear, this was a textbook little downtrend. Look at that, boom, boom. And you're like, oh, okay, we're gonna make another lower high and another lower low. Of course, you can see that's not what price did. It just went up, and in fact, it made a higher it made a higher high, it made a higher low here, and then just continued to rally. So that's why you have to be nimble. This thing is obviously being bought up heavy, right? Like, they're buying every decline. So it's going to be really interesting to see where it nets out for the year 2020. And important level on this thing, opened at 86.92. That's important to know about in case we start to see a bigger decline and the monthly candle starts to threaten going red. And same kind of picture for VLO. This whole advance has been an inside candle, right? Inside the range of that big downdraft from the week of December 5th. And we're still not outside of that range. That high is at 91.56. So we'll really want to watch that level. That'll tell us that we're actually making progress. Although VLO may be telegraphing that that's exactly what's going to happen. So that is XLE. Let's look at XOP. That one was a little bit weaker actually. And in the case of XOP, so let's go back to XLE really quickly. Right. So XLE, right. So the week of the first week of 2023, XLE was able to hold a higher low, but XOP was not. And so they're on a slightly different count, where this would be your weekly cycle low, whereas for XLE, this was your weekly cycle low. So that's important to know about. And that would also mean, theoretically, a new daily cycle, right? And so XOP would be on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, they may seem bullish at face value, but it could also just be that this is going to be a left translated daily cycle. So even though it's earlier in the daily cycle, it doesn't mean it's like safer, because it may still just roll over, really, really early. It's obviously been lagging XLE, for instance. XOM, Exxon. So this one is showing us, yes, we did make a week. Like, notice the other ones weren't able to get out of the range of that big candle. This one did that actually last week. It closed above there, and now we're still above there. So that's an important level to watch on pullbacks, right? So that's 111.36, right? So above there, and you can really stay bullish on this name. And the opening price for Exxon is 109.78. Important to know about in any big downdrafts. And we think about the daily cycle. I think it's probably on day 24. No, it's day 26 in this case. Okay. But this thing has really long daily cycles, so that's important to know, right? Like, the last rally didn't top out until, what is that? Doesn't mean we're going to get a repeat, but like, we're talking day 36. Now we're here at day 26, so it's not like we have months left of upside, but just important to kind of gauge. Phillips 66. Ooh, this one is underperforming. We found a dog, folks. Let's mark that red. Phillips 66. Man, it looks like a textbook bear flag on the weekly. This is what I mean. This move down, and then this feeble bounce, this becoming a lower high, right? Right? Like, this looks like a textbook. Like, once this candle went red, it created the likelihood that it's going to become a lower high. And then what are we doing now? We're red. Now, still early in the week, but if we break below this low here at $100.53, you imagine we're going to test this low here at 97.94. So that's an interesting little so this is definitely underperforming. That's the weekly. And I'm guessing the monthly is red. Yep, so the monthly is red. So that's important. We haven't made a new low on the monthly yet. It's that same level at 97.94 would make a new low on the monthly chart. That said, we have a huge bullish candle from September that, like, this is basically just consolidation at the upper end of the range of this candle. So nothing to get too excited about in terms of the bearish side, but clear levels to sort of watch, because it is sort of underperforming near term. And you can see on the daily chart, this would be your daily cycle low, and you can see the bear flag structure that we identified on the weekly kind of on this daily, right? Like, it's this bear flag of this move, right? And I mean, look at this creepy, crawly daily cycle, right? So we have a high on day 19, but it's like, how much actual progress did we make, right? Like, what is from Pico bottom? Wow, so that's 9%. So it took us 19 days to move 9%, which, I mean, 9% is nothing to sneeze at, but you think about other advances this thing has done, like, this is obviously not 9%, right? Like, and I'm not saying every rally has to be like this, but this tells you something has changed a bit, right? And not for the good. That's Phillips 66. OIH, this one has been outperforming its oil services. Oh my goodness. Is that making that's a new local high, not a new all-time high, but certainly a new multi-year high. Last time we looked at this, we drew these because they were lower highs, right? Notice something, folks? We're above both of those highs now, right? Comfortably above. I mean, comfortably is a relative term, but this thing continues to outperform OIH. If one were to be long, if I were to be long this sector, it would be this thing. Do we have, a little dividend at 88 basis points, almost a percent. And what else? Anything else to identify? Wow, that's interesting. What are the next levels for this thing, potentially? I see, this is on the weekly chart. You can see this zone here back in 2019 that we kind of collapsed from. Like, I mean, this was the start of a major downtrend. Look at that. My God, what a downtrend. Ooh, this thing is epic, right? So that's going to be interesting. What is that level? That's right around 370, let's just call it 370 to 375. Price could not get back above that level. And then you think about that kind of area, right, where price kind of grinded up against it to the downside, and it held until we cascaded lower. That's all the way up at 460. These are just interesting areas that might come into play as the uptrend continues. And again, this is clearly one of the stronger ones. And if we quickly look at the monthly chart, ooh, look at this thing. Beautiful. Like near term. Long term, this is, we're obviously beneath two massive swing highs, right? Or several. Look at that. Look at these swing highs. Look at these things. Now, the thing about these swing highs, though, is they become an opportunity, right? Like, when we're in the downtrend, it's ugly and it sucks and that's terrible. But, like, now that we've began this little uptrend, you can see it, right? Like, I'll draw it in case we can't all see it, right? Like that. Boop, 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 boop. This isn't as clean as it could be, folks. Apologies. But now that we're in this little uptrend after this like nasty spill down, these swing highs become areas that need to be reconquered and, potential take profit targets where you might lighten up, where you might expect there's some overhead supply. So you want to get out, right? So you want to just be cautious at least, right? Like they become levels of interest where price may aggregate again at some point. So this is going to be a really interesting one. And again, pays a little dividend. OIH. ConocoPhillips. This one has definitely a bear flag look to it. It's got to get above, this is a weekly chart, it's got to get above 124.69. That's the high from this candle here. So still about $5 below that. And again, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks just still inside this range, not really making a whole lot of progress. That doesn't bode so well, especially as you look at these other names like Valero. I mean, that thing looks really strong, or even in the Exxon, right? I don't see why one would want to be in this one. High on day 19 so far, so it's making a new high today, but also similar to the other name that we just talked about. What kind of progress have we made? Okay, 12.2%. But again, you look at some of these other names, I guess like OIH. What have you done for me lately? And this is an ETF, not an individual name. Look at that, 21%, 22%. That's relative strength. Devon, we've talked about, really sucks. And someone pointed out in the comments they have exposure to natural gas. As I said, natural gas has gotten trashed, so that's not surprising. And I'm sure some of these other guys have exposure, so that makes sense. So daily cycle, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the high on day 6 so far. And certainly there's the notion that this thing gets dragged up with the rest of the sector, again, right? Like as people kind of just buy these names as a group. So it may not, so that may limit some of the downside, but clearly this thing is just, you can see that like that's, like we're in a downtrend, right? And this is making a slight higher high than this, but it's still well below these. And so we need to see a lot more from this name. And that's just a daily chart. Ooh, look at this weekly. Look at this creepy crawly action. Again, it's the same pattern for a lot of these. You got this big red candle from the week of December 5th. And now it's a question of what have you done since that? In the case of things like Exxon, we're above it. We're like, goodbye candle, right? In the case of something like Devon Energy, you got this thing like, ugh. So the high from this is, what is that? 64.78. And this candle's high is $70.64. So $5 below where we need to be. So about 10% below. So all that to say, it's been 6 weeks and it's made almost no progress. And in fact, it actually did make a decent lower low. It bounced back, to be fair. But again, what has it done since then? So that's Devon. And if you think about, so that was your weekly. And if we think about the monthly, always important to know, again, what is the opening price on this one? That level is $60.73. So we could expect to cross below that to go red for the month if the decline accelerates. Marathon Oil looks like it's about to go red, actually, on the monthly. Monthly opened at $26.68. This was one of our underperformers we called out. And look at that. Again, that story of what have you done the last 6 weeks? 5 of those last 6 weeks closed red. That is important. That's telling you something. This is one to stay away from in this sector, right? Especially in a sector that's doing really well. Why would you want to be in this thing that's kind of like chopping around, declining 10-week moving average, bad news bears? What does it look like on the daily? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's almost an identical chart to Devon, right? So a high on day 6, currently day 8, looking like it wants to already roll over. That's Marathon Oil. See, I'm guessing it has natural gas exposure, maybe. Who knows? This is Chevron. Let's look at the daily first. What day are we on? This would be day 19. Okay. And how are we looking for the weekly? Did we get above that candle? Not quite, but we're close, right? So some things have blasted through. OIH is another one that's just blasted through. Others are close though, and then others like Devon or Marathon are nowhere near, or they're much further away, right? And so that's kind of the tale of these oil names, right? And so in this case, that high is 182.95. Got to get back above 182.95. Let's see if it can make that happen. And so that is, that's actually the last name that we had, Chevron. That's the weekly. And the monthly chart on this guy, opening price 178. So you want to stay above that to remain green. It is green so far. And that's that. So that was a quick rundown of a lot of names. I hope those levels were helpful. If you found the video useful, please like. It helps more people to find the content. If you're not subscribed, definitely consider subscribing, and make sure you hit that notification bell to make sure that you're getting those frequent updates. And certainly also follow on Twitter. All that info will be in the pinned comment. Thank you for watching.